Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the stars. The Starbound was the best ship humanity had ever built, fast and strong enough to travel to places no human had ever seen before. Jake had been its captain for 5 years, leading his crew to discover new worlds and make contact with alien races across the galaxy. The bridge was quiet that morning as they moved through the Andromeda sector. His crew was busy with their usual work, checking systems and scanning for anything interesting. Jake liked these peaceful moments between the big discoveries. Space was huge and mostly empty, but that made finding something new even more exciting. Lieutenant Sophie Martinez sat at her station, watching the tactical displays. She was good at her job and had saved them from trouble many times. Commander Ryan Tucker worked at the communications desk, listening to radio signals from distant worlds. Between the two of them, Jake felt confident about handling whatever they might find out here. The alarm made everyone look up. Ryan turned in his chair and called out to Jake. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors." Jake walked over to Ryan's station. "What kind of strange?" "It's a message, but not a distress call. The signal is strong and clear, coming from about 3 light-years away. The interesting part is that it's meant for us, specifically." Sophie left her post to join them. "For us? How could anyone know we're here?" Ryan shook his head. "I don't know. But the message uses our ship's name and your rank, Captain. It's also in perfect English." Jake felt his heart beat faster. First contact with new alien races was always dangerous and exciting at the same time. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered and then showed the face of a young woman, but she was clearly not human. Her skin had a soft blue glow, and her eyes were large and silver like liquid metal. Small crystals grew from her forehead and along her cheeks, catching the light as she moved. She was beautiful in a way that was completely different from any human. "Captain Jake Morrison of the vessel Starbound," she said, and her voice was like music. "My name is Princess Kira Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. I send this message with great hope and some fear, for what I ask is not small." Jake looked at his crew. Sophie had her hand on her weapon, but Ryan seemed fascinated by the alien princess. Jake gestured for them to stay calm and listen. "We have watched your species for many years," Princess Kira continued. "Humans interest us because you are different from other races we know. You feel emotions strongly and you care for each other in ways we find remarkable. You also think in new ways that surprise us, solving problems that have confused others for centuries." The princess paused and looked directly at the camera, as if she could see Jake through the screen. "I make this request because my mother, Empress Luna Veltar, needs a mate to keep her power according to our ancient laws. But more than that, I have never had a father, and I long for one. Our people are ruled by logic and mental discipline, but we have seen that humans possess something we lack." Jake felt his mouth go dry. This was not the kind of first contact he had expected. The Zephyrian Empire spans thousands of worlds and billions of people. My mother has ruled wisely for 300 years, but our laws say she must bond with a mate or lose her throne. The bonding is not just marriage as humans understand it. It is a joining of minds that lasts forever. Sophie whispered to Jake, "Captain, this could be a trap." But Princess Kira seemed to hear her somehow, even though that should have been impossible. "I know you have reasons to be careful. We are strangers to you, and what I ask seems impossible. But I have studied humans, and I believe Captain Morrison has the qualities we need. He is brave but not reckless, strong but kind, and he cares for his crew like a family." Jake wondered how she could know so much about him. The princess smiled. "Sadly, I know this because we have been watching you since you first left your home system. Not to harm you, but to learn from you. We have seen how you treat other species with respect, how you protect those who cannot protect themselves, and how you make hard decisions with both your mind and your heart." Ryan leaned forward. "Captain, the signal is coming from the Zephyros system. According to our star charts, that's the center of one of the largest empires in this part of the galaxy." Princess Kira nodded. "Commander Tucker is correct. We are powerful, but power without wisdom leads to emptiness. My mother is lonely, despite having millions of subjects. I am lonely despite having everything a princess could want. We believe humans can teach us what we have forgotten about connection and love. Jake felt the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. What exactly are you asking me to do? Come to our world. Meet my mother. Learn about our people, and let us learn about yours. If you choose to accept the bonding, you would become Prince Consort of the Zephyrian Empire and help rule the stars. You would also become the father I have always wanted. The bridge was completely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat and the soft hum of the ship's engines. This was beyond anything in the first contact protocols. No human had ever been asked to marry an alien empress or adopt an alien princess. The choice must be yours freely. Maid, Princess Kira said, we will not force you or threaten you, but know that this alliance could change the future for both our peoples. Humans have something special, something the galaxy needs. Your emotions, your ability to bond with others, your way of seeing new solutions to old problems. Jake looked at Sophie and Ryan. Both of them seemed stunned but also excited. This was why they had come to space, to find new worlds and new possibilities. I need time to think about this, Jake said to the screen. Princess Kira smiled, and for a moment she looked very young despite her strange beauty. Of course. But please do not take too long. There are others in the galaxy who would not welcome an alliance between humans and Zephyrians, some who might try to stop it if they learn what we plan. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at the stars again. But now they looked different, full of possibilities he had never imagined. Sophie and Ryan waited for his decision, knowing that whatever he chose would change everything for humanity. Jake took a deep breath and made his choice. Jake stood before the massive crystal gates of Zephyros Prime and tried not to show how amazed he felt. The Zephyrian homeworld was unlike anything he had ever seen. Cities made of living crystals stretched toward purple skies, and beings with glowing skin moved through the streets like graceful dancers. Everything seemed to sing with a soft musical tone that he could feel in his bones. Sophie Martinez walked beside him, her eyes constantly moving to check for threats. She had insisted on coming as his tactical officer, though Jake suspected she was more worried about him than any military concerns. Ryan Tucker followed behind them, carrying a translation device even though the Zephyrians seemed to speak perfect English. Princess Kira met them at the palace entrance. In person, she was even more striking than in the transmission. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight, and when she smiled, the crystals on her face sparkled like diamonds. But what caught Jake's attention was the loneliness in her. Silver eyes, a sadness that reminded him of children he had known who grew up without parents. Captain Morrison, she said, and her voice was warm with genuine happiness. You came. I was not certain you would. Jake nodded. I give my word when I make a promise, but I want to understand what I'm agreeing to before I make any final decisions. Of course, Princess Kira said. Come, my mother waits for us. They walked through halls that seemed to be carved from single enormous crystals. Light moved through the walls like water, creating patterns that were beautiful and somehow alive. Other Zephyrians they passed stopped to stare at the humans, their large eyes curious but not hostile. Your people seem very advanced, Ryan observed, watching the way doors opened without any visible mechanism. We have had time to develop our technology, Princess Kira replied. But advancement in machines is not the same as advancement in spirit. This is something we have learned by watching your species. They entered a vast chamber with a ceiling that showed the stars above. At the center, on a throne that looked like it had grown from the planet itself, sat Empress Luna Veltar. Jake had expected someone imposing and distant, but the woman who rose to meet them seemed tired and genuinely curious about her visitors. Luna was taller than her daughter, with skin that glowed like moonlight and crystals that formed an intricate crown around her head. Her robes moved like water, shifting colors from deep blue to silver. When she looked at Jake, he felt as though she was seeing into his soul, but not in a threatening way. Captain Morrison, she said, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. Thank you for accepting my daughter's invitation. I know this must seem very strange to you. Jake stepped forward and gave a respectful bow. Your Majesty, I'm honored to meet you, but I have to admit, I don't fully understand what you're asking of me. Luna smiled, and suddenly she looked much younger. Honesty, that is one of the human traits we find most valuable. Please, sit with us and let me explain. They settled on chairs that formed themselves from the crystal floor. Princess Kira sat, close to Jake, closer than formal protocol would normally allow. Sophie positioned herself where she could watch the exits, while Ryan focused on the Empress. Our people evolved with telepathic abilities, Luna began. We can share thoughts and emotions directly without words. This makes us very efficient at working together, but it also means we rarely form deep personal connections. When you can read someone's mind, there are few surprises, few discoveries about each other. Jake nodded slowly. That sounds lonely. It is, Princess Kira said, quietly. We know what others are thinking, but we don't know what it feels like to be truly close to someone. We don't have families the way humans do. Children are raised by the community, and mates are chosen for political or genetic advantages. Luna looked at her daughter with something that Jake recognized as love, even though it was expressed differently than human emotions. Kira has always been different. She questions our ways and dreams of connections like the ones she sees in human stories and records. When she suggested that I might find a mate among your people, I thought she was being foolish. But then we studied humans more carefully, Princess Kira continued. We watched how you care for each other, how you sacrifice for your friends, how you create bonds that last even when they are difficult or painful. We realized that this is what our empire needs. Sophie leaned forward. Your Majesty, with respect. Why Jake specifically? There are billions of humans. Luna looked directly at Jake as she answered. Because Captain Morrison has shown the qualities we need in a leader. He protects his crew but does not dominate them. He makes decisions quickly but considers the consequences. He is brave but not foolish. Strong but not cruel. You've been watching me for a long time, Jake said. We have, Luna admitted. Your first contact protocols, the way you handle diplomatic situations, your respect for other species, these things impressed us, but what convinced me was watching how you mourn for crew members you have lost and celebrate their victories. This emotional depth is what Zephyrian leadership lacks. Princess Kira turned to face Jake directly. In our culture, the ruler must have a bonded mate to remain in power. The bonding is telepathic and permanent. It means sharing thoughts, emotions, even memories. My mother would know your mind as well as her own, and you would know hers. Jake felt his heart race. That's a big step. It is, Luna agreed. But it would also give you abilities no human has ever had. You would be able to communicate with any Zephyrian instantly, understand our technology intuitively, and help guide an empire that spans thousands of worlds. Ryan cleared his throat. What about humanity? What would this alliance mean for our people? Everything, Princess Kira said with excitement. Humans would become part of the galactic community at the highest level. Access to our technology, our knowledge, our trade networks, protection from hostile species who might otherwise see humanity as weak or primitive. Luna nodded. But more than that, we believe humans can teach other species what we have learned from you. The galaxy has become cold and calculating, focused only on power and resources. Your people remember that relationships and emotions are sources of strength, not weakness. Jake stood and walked to the crystal wall, looking out at the alien city below. He could see beings moving through the streets with purpose but no joy, efficiency but no warmth. It reminded him of some of the automated systems on his ship, perfectly functional but lacking something essential. What would happen to my crew? He asked. They would be honored guests, Luna said. Commander Tucker's linguistic abilities would make him valuable as a cultural liaison. Lieutenant Martinez could help train our military in human tactical thinking. Both would be welcome to stay or return to human space as they choose. Princess Kira joined Jake at the wall. But I hope you would stay. I have never had a father, and I believe I could learn much from you about being human. Jake looked down at the young alien princess. Despite her strange appearance and incredible powers, she reminded him of every lonely child he had ever met. The longing in her voice was something he understood completely. The bonding ceremony, he said. What does it involve exactly? Luna stood and approached them. It is done through direct mental contact. You would experience my memories, my thoughts, my feelings for my people and my daughter. I would experience yours. The process changes both participants, making them stronger together than they were apart. And there's no going back? No, Luna said simply. But Jake Morrison, I do not believe you are someone who runs from commitment when it serves a greater purpose. Jake looked at Sophie and Ryan, both of whom were watching him with trust and concern. He thought about his life among the stars, always searching for something new and meaningful. He thought about Princess Kira's loneliness and Empress Luna's centuries of isolation. Most of all, he thought about the possibility of changing the galaxy for the better. I need one night to decide, he said finally. Luna smiled. Of course. Kira will show you to your quarters. Take all the time you need, but remember that there are those who would not welcome this alliance. Time may be more precious than we know. Jake woke before dawn in his crystal chamber and found Princess Kira sitting by the window, looking out at the purple sky. She had not slept, he realized, and something in her posture told him she was worried about more than just his decision. Good morning, he said quietly, not wanting to startle her. She turned and smiled, but the expression did not reach her silver eyes. Good morning, Jake. May I call you that instead of Captain? It feels more like family. Of course, Jake said, sitting in the chair across from her. What's troubling you? Kira was quiet for a moment, then spoke in a voice smaller than usual. The Council of Minds met last night. They are not all pleased with my mother's choice to bond with a human. Some believe it shows weakness, that we should find strength only within our own people. Jake nodded. There will always be those who fear change, even when it's for the better. But these are not just worried citizens, Kira continued. These are the most powerful telepaths in our empire, beings who have lived for thousands of years. If they decide to oppose the bonding, they could make things very difficult. Before Jake could respond, Sophie appeared in the doorway. She had obviously been awake for some time, probably checking the security of their quarters. Captain, Commander, Tucker intercepted some communications during the night. We need to talk. They moved to the main room where Ryan was working at a portable terminal he had set up. His face was serious as he looked up at Jake. I've been monitoring radio traffic from across this sector, Ryan said. The Krex hegemony has mobilized 3 battle fleets. Their ships are moving toward the border between Zephyrian and neutral space. Jake felt his stomach tighten. How much time do we have? Maybe 2 weeks before they reach striking distance of this system, Ryan replied. But Captain, there's more. I picked up fragments of their communications, and they specifically mentioned preventing a human Zephyrian alliance. Princess Kira stood quickly, her face pale. They know about the bonding ceremony. Someone told them. Sophie checked her weapon, automatically. Your Majesty, we need to assume there are spies or traitors in the court. Not spies, came Empress Luna's voice from the doorway. She entered with several guards, but Jake noticed she looked more determined than afraid. Telepaths loyal to the old ways who believe our empire should remain isolated. They contacted the Krex themselves. Jake stood to face the Empress. Your Majesty, if my presence here is causing this much trouble, maybe I should leave. No. Princess, Kira said firmly, moving to stand beside him. That is exactly what they want. If you leave now, nothing changes. Our empire stays cold and distant, and humanity remains alone in the galaxy. Luna nodded agreement. The Council of Minds has agreed to test you, Jake Morrison. If you pass their trials, they will support the bonding and help us face the Krex. If you fail, I will not force them to accept you, even though it means giving up my throne. What kind of trials? Sophie asked. Tests of mind, spirit, and leadership, Luna explained. The first is a mental bonding with me, but limited and temporary. You would experience some of my memories, and I would experience yours. This will show the Council that a human mind can handle telepathic contact without breaking. Jake thought about this. And if my mind does break, then you would lose your memories, your personality, everything that makes you who you are, Luna said sadly. I will not lie to you about the risks. Princess Kira grabbed Jake's arm. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. But Jake looked at the fear and hope in her eyes, the weariness in Luna's face, and the trust in his crew's expressions. No. This is why I came here. What's the second trial? Combat leadership, Luna continued. You would work with our military, commanders to develop strategies for defending against the Krex attack. This will test whether human tactical thinking can integrate with Zephyrian abilities. Ryan stepped forward. Captain, Sophie and I could help with that. We've studied enemy tactics from a dozen different species. The Council will allow your officers to participate, Luna agreed. The third trial is the hardest to explain. It tests your ability to truly understand what it means to be a father to Kira and a leader to our people. How do you test something like that? Jake asked. Princess Kira answered quietly. You would spend time with children from across our empire, including those who have lost their parents to war or accident. You would need to show that you can provide not just leadership, but the emotional guidance our people have forgotten how to give. Jake looked out the window at the crystal city below. Somewhere out there, enemy fleets were moving toward them. Somewhere in this palace, telepaths were deciding the fate of two civilizations. And here, a lonely princess was asking him to become the father she had never had. When do we start? He said. The trials began immediately. Jake found himself in a chamber deep within the palace, surrounded by the Council of Minds. They were ancient Zephyrians whose telepathic abilities were so strong that the air around them seemed to shimmer with mental energy. Luna sat across from Jake, her hand extended toward him. Are you ready? Jake reached out and took her hand. The moment their skin touched, the world exploded into light and sensation. He was Luna, ruling an empire for centuries, making decisions that affected billions of lives, carrying the weight of responsibility that never lessened. He felt her loneliness, deeper than any ocean, the isolation that came from being able to read minds but never truly connecting with another soul. He experienced her love for Kira, complicated by not knowing how to express it in ways her daughter could understand. At the same time, Luna was experiencing his memories, his childhood on Earth, the death of his parents, his decision to join the space program, his years as captain, the crew members he had lost, the impossible decisions he had made to keep his people safe, his longing to find meaning among the stars, to make a difference that would matter. The Council watched as their minds merged and separated, testing the limits of what a human consciousness could endure. Jake felt his sense of self wavering, but each time it started to slip away, he focused on the faces of his crew, on Princess Kira's hopeful smile, on the possibility of preventing a war. When it was over, Jake collapsed back in his chair, exhausted, but intact. Luna was breathing heavily, her eyes wide with wonder. Remarkable, said the eldest council member. His mind bent but did not break. And the emotions we sensed, the depth of feeling, it is unlike anything we have experienced. The second trial moved to the military command center, where Zephyrian generals showed Jake holographic displays of enemy fleet movements. Sophie and Ryan worked alongside alien tacticians, their human perspectives adding new dimensions to battle strategies that had remained unchanged for millennia. The Krex always attack in formation, Sophie observed. They rely on overwhelming force and coordinated strikes. But what if we could make them think we were weaker than we really are? Jake studied the tactical displays. Their ships are built for direct confrontation. They won't expect hit-and-run tactics or feints designed to split their forces. A Zephyrian commander named Velhan nodded slowly. Human unpredictability combined with our telepathic coordination could create strategies they have never encountered. They worked through the night, developing new approaches to space combat that surprised even the council members who observed them. The third trial was the hardest for Jake emotionally. Princess Kira brought him to a center where Zephyrian children lived who had lost their families to various tragedies. The children were polite but distant, their telepathic abilities letting them sense his emotions but not understand them. Jake sat with them, telling stories from Earth, sharing human concepts of family and belonging that were alien to their experience. Slowly, the children began to respond to something they had never encountered before, the unconditional care and attention that human parents gave naturally. One young boy named Zentar had not spoken since his parents died in a mining accident. But when Jake showed him how to play simple human games, how to laugh without reason, how to feel safe just because someone cared about him, the child began to speak again. The children respond to you in ways we have never seen, observed the council member overseeing the trial. "You offer something our people have forgotten how to give." When all 3 trials were complete, Jake stood before the full council of minds while Princess Kira and Empress Luna waited nearby. The decision would determine not just his fate, but the future relationship between humanity and the greatest empire in the galaxy. The eldest council member spoke for them all. "Jake Morrison, you have proven that a human mind can bond with ours, that human tactics can strengthen our military, and that human emotions can heal wounds we did not know we carried. We approve the bonding ceremony." But even as Jake felt relief wash over him, alarms began to sound throughout the palace. Ryan's voice came over the communication system with urgent news. "Captain, the Krex fleets just jumped to hyperspace. They'll be here in 3 days, not 2 weeks. Someone gave them our exact location." The war room of the Zephyrian Palace filled with controlled chaos as reports came in from across the Empire. Jake stood beside Empress Luna at the central command table, watching holographic displays show enemy fleet movements that painted a grim picture. The Krex hegemony had brought not just their own ships, but allies from 3 other major powers, creating the largest attack force seen in this part of the galaxy for centuries. Sophie Martinez worked at a tactical station beside Zephyrian commanders, her human training in asymmetric warfare proving valuable as they planned defensive strategies. Ryan Tucker coordinated communications between distant star systems, his ability to speak multiple alien languages helping to keep allied forces connected across vast distances. Princess Kira moved between different stations, her telepathic abilities, allowing her to relay information instantly between commanders who were spread across the planet. But Jake could see the strain in her silver eyes, the fear that everything they had worked for might be destroyed before it could truly begin. "The enemy fleets are larger than our intelligence suggested," reported Commander Velhan, the Zephyrian, military leader who had worked with Sophie during the trials. "They have 800 ships compared to our 400 in this sector." Luna studied the displays with centuries of leadership experience. "Numbers are not everything. Our ships are more advanced, and our telepathic coordination gives us advantages they cannot match." "But they have something we don't," Jake said, pointing to formations on the hologram. "They're completely unified in their goal. They want to destroy this alliance before it can inspire other species to change the way galactic politics work." Sophie looked up from her station. "Captain, I've been analyzing their attack patterns from previous battles. The Krex always lead with overwhelming force, but their allies hang back until they're sure of victory. If we could find a way to make their allies doubt the outcome early in the battle." "That's where human unpredictability comes in," Ryan added from his communications post. "They've studied Zephyrian tactics for centuries, but they've never fought humans before." Jake felt an idea forming, something that combined everything he had learned about both human and Zephyrian strengths. "What if we don't fight the battle they expect? Instead of meeting them head-on, what if we make them come to us while questioning everything they think they know?" Luna turned to face him fully. "Explain." "The Krex expect us to defend our worlds in predictable ways," Jake continued. "But what if we let them think they're winning while we're actually setting up something they've never encountered before?" "Princess," Kira moved closer. "You mean a trap?" "More than that," Jake said, his excitement growing. "A demonstration. We show them and their allies what our combined abilities can really accomplish, something so unexpected that they'll have to reconsider whether destroying us is worth the cost." The bonding ceremony took place that night despite the approaching enemy, perhaps because of it. Jake and Luna stood in the ancient chamber where Zephyrian rulers had joined with their mates for thousands of years. The Council of Minds surrounded them, lending their telepathic strength to ensure the process succeeded. Princess Kira watched from the edge of the circle, her face showing both hope and worry. If the bonding failed now, they would lose not only the alliance, but possibly Jake's life as enemy forces closed in on their world. "Are you ready?" Luna asked, her voice soft but steady. Jake nodded, thinking of his crew, of Kira's longing for family, of the possibility that this moment might change the galaxy forever. "I'm ready." Luna placed her hands on either side of his face, her skin warm despite its otherworldly glow. The mental contact was different from the trial, deeper and more permanent. Jake felt his consciousness expanding, merging with Luna's, in ways that went beyond human understanding. He experienced her memories not as a visitor, but as a part of her. Centuries of rule, difficult decisions, the gradual realization that power without emotional connection led only to emptiness. At the same time, Luna absorbed his human experiences, the bonds of friendship and loyalty that had shaped his life, the intuitive decision-making that came from trusting both logic and feelings. When the bonding was complete, Jake found that he could sense the thoughts and emotions of every Zephyrian in the palace. More than that, he understood their technology and culture in ways that would have taken years to learn through normal means. Luna, in turn, had gained access to human creativity and emotional intelligence that enhanced her already formidable abilities. "It is done," announced the eldest council member. "Prince Consort Jake Morrison, welcome to the Zephyrian Empire." Princess Kira ran forward and embraced Jake, tears of joy streaming down her face. For the first time in her life, she had a father who understood both the logic of her people and the emotional needs she had always felt but never been able to express. But their celebration was brief. The enemy fleets had reached the outer planets of the Zephyrian system and begun their attack. The first phase of Jake's plan unfolded exactly as he had hoped. Zephyrian forces appeared to fight conventionally, meeting the enemy in traditional formations that the Kreks had studied and prepared for. To outside observers, it looked like the defenders were being slowly overwhelmed by superior numbers. Sophie led a joint task force of human and Zephyrian ships using tactics that appeared desperate, but were actually carefully coordinated. They would engage enemy squadrons, seem to take heavy damage, and then retreat toward the inner planets. The Kreks commanders interpreted this as confirmation that their intelligence about Zephyrian weaknesses was correct. Ryan coordinated what appeared to be panicked communications between different Zephyrian commanders, letting the enemy intercept transmissions that suggested growing confusion and loss of morale among the defenders. In reality, the entire Zephyrian fleet was connected through telepathic links that the enemy could not detect or disrupt. Jake stood in the command center with Luna, both of them using their new bond to coordinate activities across dozens of star systems. Through the telepathic network, he could sense the position and status of every friendly ship, allowing for a level of tactical awareness no human commander had ever possessed. "The Kreks are taking the bait," Sophie reported from her flagship. "Their advance forces are pushing deep into the system while their allies move up to support what they think will be the final assault." Princess Kira, who had insisted on joining the space battle despite her youth, commanded a squadron of fast attack ships. "Father, the enemy formations are exactly where you predicted they would be." Jake smiled at hearing her call him father, even in the middle of a battle. "Then it's time for the second phase." What happened next was something no species in the galaxy had ever seen before. The supposedly damaged and retreating Zephyrian ships suddenly revealed that they were completely intact and had been joined by massive reinforcements that had been hidden using a combination of human stealth technology and Zephyrian mental cloaking. More importantly, the defenders began fighting in ways that confused and disrupted enemy tactics that had worked for centuries. Human unpredictability, guided by Zephyrian telepathic coordination, created a form of warfare that was both chaotic and perfectly organized. Ships appeared where the enemy least expected them, launched attacks that seemed impossible to coordinate, without detectable communications, and used weapons combinations that shouldn't have been effective but somehow were. The Kreks found themselves fighting an enemy that anticipated their moves while making counter-moves that defied all tactical logic. The alien allies who had joined the Kreks began to waver as they realized they were not facing the easy victory they had been promised. The battle that was supposed to end quickly in their favor had become a demonstration of capabilities they had never imagined possible. Jake felt the tide turning through his bond with Luna and the telepathic network that connected. All Zephyrian forces, now for the final phase. Instead of pressing their advantage through violence, the combined human Zephyrian forces did something unprecedented. They began broadcasting on all frequencies, not threats or demands for surrender, but an offer of alliance to any species that wanted to join a new form of galactic cooperation. Princess Kira's voice carried across space to the enemy fleets. "We do not seek to conquer or destroy you. We offer something better. Partnership instead of dominance, cooperation instead of conquest. See what we have accomplished together in just a few days, and imagine what we could achieve in years or centuries of working together." The response was immediate and dramatic. 3 of the 4 allied species began breaking away from the Krex formations, their commanders requesting negotiations instead of continued fighting. Even some Krex ships stopped attacking, their crews realizing that destroying this alliance would mean losing access to capabilities that could benefit everyone. The war ended not with a decisive battle, but with the gradual recognition that the human-Zephyrian partnership offered something more valuable than victory through force. Species that had been enemies for generations began to consider whether cooperation might serve their interests better than eternal conflict. As Jake watched former enemies become potential allies, he realized that Princess Kira's desperate plea for a father had become the catalyst for changing. 2 years had passed since the battle that changed everything, and Jake stood on the observation deck of the new stellar Commonwealth headquarters, watching ships from dozens of different species arrive for the annual Alliance Conference. The station orbited a neutral world that had been chosen specifically because no single species could claim it as their territory. Princess Kira, now grown into a confident leader who balanced Zephyrian mental discipline with human emotional wisdom, worked beside him reviewing the agenda for the next day's meetings. She had become the first ambassador of the Commonwealth, traveling between worlds to help other species learn how to integrate different approaches to problem-solving and relationship building. The Andorian delegation is requesting mediation for their trade dispute with the Kepler colonies, Kira said, her silver eyes focused on the diplomatic reports displayed in the air before them. The Thrakari want to discuss joining the Mutual Defense Agreement, and the former Krex territories are asking for help with refugee resettlement. Jake smiled as he listened to his daughter discuss galactic politics with the same care he had once used for planning exploration missions. The loneliness that had marked her childhood was gone, replaced by the confidence that came from knowing she belonged to a family and had important work to do. "What do you think about the Thrakari? Request?" he asked. Kira paused, considering the question with both logic and intuition, as he had taught her. They were our enemies 2 years ago, but they've shown genuine commitment to the Commonwealth principles. Their military strength would be valuable, but more importantly, accepting them would prove that former enemies can become true partners. Luna appeared in the doorway, her telepathic bond with Jake allowing her to sense his emotions across the station. Marriage had changed her in ways that amazed the Zephyrian people, bringing warmth and spontaneity to a ruler who had once been admired, but distant. The Empire had flourished under her renewed leadership, becoming more innovative and connected than anyone had thought possible. "The Council of Minds has finished reviewing the new membership applications," Luna announced. 17 species want to join the Commonwealth this year, including 3 from the Far Rim who have never participated in galactic politics before. Jake felt a mixture of pride and concern. The rapid growth of their alliance was encouraging, but it also brought challenges that tested their ability to integrate vastly different cultures and values. Sophie Martinez entered from the tactical center, where she had been coordinating security for the conference. Her role had evolved from protecting Jake to helping train the first generation of Commonwealth peacekeepers, beings from multiple species who learned to work together using combined human and alien techniques. "Captain, the security briefing is ready for your review," Sophie said, then caught herself and smiled. "Sorry, Your Highness. I still think of you as my captain sometimes." "I prefer captain," Jake replied. "Titles are useful, but they shouldn't change who we are to the people we care about." Ryan Tucker appeared on the communication screen from his office in the diplomatic wing. His linguistic talents had made him invaluable as the Commonwealth's chief translator and cultural advisor, helping species overcome barriers that had prevented cooperation for millennia. "Jake, I've got representatives from the machine intelligences of the Zerion Collective arriving tomorrow," Ryan reported. "They're interested in the emotional intelligence training programs, which frankly surprised everyone, including me." Jake nodded. The success of the Commonwealth had attracted attention from the most unlikely sources. Species that had once dismissed emotions as weaknesses were beginning to understand that feelings could be sources of strength and wisdom when properly understood and managed. The evening brought the informal gathering that had become Jake's favorite part of these conferences. Representatives from across the galaxy met not in formal session halls, but in common areas designed to encourage casual conversation and relationship building. Jake watched as a young Krex officer shared a meal with a Zephyrian family whose world his people had once attacked. At another table, former enemies worked together on a puzzle game that required cooperation instead of competition. Children from a dozen different species played games that mixed traditions from their various cultures. Princess Kira moved through the crowd like a diplomat born to the role. But Jake could see the pure joy in her expression as she connected with beings who had become not just political allies, but genuine friends. The lonely child who had first reached out to him through space had become someone who brought light and warmth wherever she went. "You know what I love most about this?" Luna said, joining Jake at his observation point. "What's that?" 2 years ago, these species saw each other as threats or resources to be exploited. Now they're planning joint exploration missions, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaborations that will benefit everyone. Jake nodded, watching as a group of former Krex warriors helped Zephyrian engineers design new medical facilities for refugee camps. "The galaxy is learning what you and Kira taught me. That strength comes from connection, not isolation." Sophie approached with news from the military planning session. "Captain, the joint defense exercises were more successful than anyone predicted. Having telepaths coordinate with human tactical thinking and Krex determination created combinations that impressed even the observers from neutral systems. Any new applications to join the defense agreement?" 5 more species submitted formal requests this week, Sophie replied. "But more importantly, 3 of the major powers that haven't joined the Commonwealth yet are asking for observer status. During the exercises, they want to see what we've accomplished." Ryan's voice came over the communication system with an announcement for the entire station. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings of all species, tomorrow marks the 2nd anniversary of the battle that created our alliance. But tonight, we celebrate something more important. We celebrate the families we've built, the friendships we've forged, and the future we're creating together." Jake felt a deep satisfaction as he looked around the gathering. Every person and being in this room was here because a lonely princess had reached across space to ask a human captain for help. That simple request for family and love had grown into a galactic transformation that continued to spread. Princess Kira approached him with a small group of young beings from various species, all of them participants in the new interspecies exchange program that allowed children to learn about different cultures firsthand. "Father, I wanted you to meet this year's program graduates," she said. "They've spent the last 6 months living with families from species other than their own." A young Krex female stepped forward, her normally aggressive species features softened by genuine warmth. "Prince Consort Morrison, living with a human family taught me that strength and kindness can exist together. I want to become a diplomat like Princess Kira." A Zephyrian child who had lived with former enemies spoke next. "The Thrakari family I stayed with showed me that logic and emotion don't have to be opposites. They can make each other stronger." Jake listened to each young being describe how their experiences had changed their understanding of the galaxy and their place in it. These children would grow up in a universe where cooperation was normal, where former enemies could become friends, where different approaches to life could strengthen each other instead of causing conflict. As the evening continued, Jake found himself remembering the moment when he had first seen Princess Kira's transmission on the bridge of the Starbound. He had been exploring space in search of something meaningful, never imagining that accepting one desperate plea for family would lead to reshaping galactic civilization. Luna joined him as the gathering began to wind down. "What are you thinking about?" "How one lonely princess changed everything," Jake replied. "Kira asked for a father and ended up giving the galaxy a new way to think about relationships and power. She learned from the best teacher," Luna said, taking his hand. "You showed her that love and leadership could work together, that caring for others made you stronger instead of weaker." Princess Kira appeared beside them, having finished her conversations with the young diplomats. "Are you two talking about me?" "We're talking about what you've accomplished," Jake said, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. 2 years ago, you reached out to a human captain because you wanted a family. Now you've helped create a galactic family." "We all did it together," Kira replied. "But I'm glad I was brave enough to make that first transmission. Even though I was scared you would say no." Jake smiled, looking out at the stars through the observation windows. "I'm glad you were brave too. Sometimes the most important decisions come from the heart, not the head." The next morning brought the formal session that would determine the Commonwealth's direction for the coming year. Jake sat beside Luna at the central table, with Princess Kira representing the diplomatic corps and Sophie and Ryan advising on military and cultural matters. Species after species stood to report on successful collaborations, peaceful resolutions, to conflicts, and joint projects that were improving life across the galaxy. The former enemies who had joined the Alliance spoke about how learning to work together had made them,